This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Junk Silver. Let's start there. I got a couple things to bring up on Cornerstone Forum. It is brought to you by the next two companies, Bow Valley Credit Union and the company talking Junk Silver Day, Silver Gold Bull. But before we get to Cornerstone, let's talk Junk Silver for a second here, okay? There's been a lot of conversations around what, the next month is going to bring, what an election is going to bring, who's going to be there, and what the landscape of Canada looks like after that. So while you're sitting here preparing for that, Junk Silver has certainly been offered up. There's a deal right now at Silver Gold Bull. It's older circulation coins like dimes, quarters, half dollars, and dollars from back before our government debased our money by removing the silver from coinage. And, a lot of people going, do I really need that? Do I not need that? I don't know. That's up to you. Certainly, I like being prepared for just about every situation. And as I check things off the old box, old silver coins actually was on there at one point. And if you're wanting to find out more, text or email Grahame for details about not only this feature, but any other questions you may have surrounding buying, selling, storing, or you can use your retirement accounts to invest in precious metals. Yep. silvergoldbull.ca.com, depending on the side of the border you're on. Anytime you're making any purchase, just reference SNP, the Shaun Newman Podcast. Helps me, helps them, can help you. Bow Valley Credit Union. Yeah, they're helping bring the Cornerstone Forum to Calgary. Ton of fun, and excited to have them teamed up with us on bringing it all there. Bow Valley Credit Union, of course, is your Alberta-regulated, fully serviced financial institution, and is proud to present not only the Cornerstone Forum, but the first in Canada gold collateral lending. Now, all of you can lend against your physical gold and silver for a favorable rate. It's like a HELOC on your gold and silver. Don't have any physical gold and silver, they can help you get a loan to purchase that as well. If you're wanting to talk about bond markets and different things like that, go back to an episode, just Tuesday's episode. Yesterday, I had CEO of Bow Valley on, Brett Oland, and we talked all about that. So if you're interested in hearing more about Bow Valley, do yourself a favor, rewind one episode and go listen to him talk. And after you're done that, shoot an email off to welcome@bowvalleycu.com. Don't wait. Contact Bow Valley. Say hello to Leanna. She'll get your BVCU membership up and running. Caleb Taves, Renegade Acres, Community Spotlight. Of course, with Renegade Acres, if you're looking for any concrete work done, I can give you 2 thumbs way up for Caleb Taves and his group. Fantastic at what they do. And he's given over his spot to the Community Spotlight, which we've been talking about the Cornerstone Forum heading to Calgary, of course, May 10th, and the fact you should be there. And I put out on Substack this week, I had a few questions come through email about, I don't know, should I come by myself? Like, kind of a little bit nervous. And so I just said, actually, it's funny, over the course of, I don't know how many events is it now, 9 or 10, I've had lots of people come by themselves, and I've never had anyone say it wasn't a great time. Here's a couple people who commented on the Substack post. First, Dawn, Cornerstone testimony. I went by myself last year, and it turned out to be a fabulous day. Met so many people from so many different life backgrounds. This year is a table of 10 plus the 2 individual seats previously purchased, and all seats are spoken for, even though I don't have many friends. And then they laughed and finally said, do not decide to not attend. Many, including myself, will welcome you, and you will never regret coming. Lee Hepner, who's been to multiple events, said, we've been to 2 events, sitting with wonderful, engaging people, and Shaun puts on a stellar event. And hey, there's a couple of testimonies from on Substack. Shout out to those fine folks, Don and Lee, for sharing their experiences. Down in the show notes, folks, is going to be where you can get tickets. If you're a business, the trade show, I can put you in contact with Shannon. She's been the one dealing with all the booths going to be in there. First time we go around for a trade show. I have no idea how it's going to go. I'm testing something out, and hopefully it's a value add for everybody who comes, including the businesses who decide to put up booths. We've been talking a bit about the new studio coming in 2025. We're looking for skills, labor, materials, money. We got a value for value wall, legacy wall going, and we want to put your name on it. So reach out to me, and we'll see what we can do. Would love to have you a part of it. If you're listening or watching on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, X, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to leave a review. Make sure to share, folks. And mark your calendars. April 28th, the mashup is going to have live election coverage all day long, and we look forward to bringing that to you, and more details as we get closer. All right, let's get on to that tale of the tape. He's a brand designer, and during the lockdown started VesperDigital on Twitter with the purpose of exposing the government and getting Justin Trudeau out of office. I'm talking about Vesper. So buckle up, here we go. Welcome to the Shaun Newman Podcast. Let's try this again. I'm here with Vesper. Vesper, thanks for hopping on.
Thank you for having me.
Now, listen, folks, me and Vesper have been chit-chatting. I mean, the audience knows who you are. You've been on a bunch of our live streams. You're like one of the, you're in, I think, the same company as Alex Zoltan, where like normally if we do a BC live election coverage, we don't allow any other province to come into that election coverage because we want that. And yet a Quebecer's found his way in, and Zoltan's found his way into multiple election coverages as well. So you have things to say. I respect your opinion. I respect how you push back on different guests, and it's interesting to watch guests come on a live stream and then get some pushback, and then be like, "Whoa, I thought this was a friendly place," and you're like, "Well, it is, but we want to have some discussion here." So we've been talking an awful lot on the podcast about Alberta independence, separation, 51st state. Canada 51st state is where it started, and we've just been chit-chatting, and the one that struck up this conversation we're having today was the Keith Wilson conversation. And so I'm going to throw the floor over to you, because you've wanted to I don't know, chime in, have some of the things that you got researched up to throw out to the people today.
So I think one of the things that, let's just set the record straight. Keith Wilson is a patriot in my book. Okay? Let's just keep it there. He's a patriot, no doubts about it, and a friend. He's a friendly, as they would say in the military. This is a friendly, and will always be a friendly. He stands his ground, a man of integrity. I could keep going on and on. The things that this man has done and fought for is what got me his respect. And he got my respect, like, profoundly. And let's also set something else straight. I'm a Quebecer, but I don't care. And frankly, I don't like the way Alberta is being treated. I'm being straight with you. I don't care who it'd be. All right. If Quebec was badly treated, I'd feel bad. I'm not for this whole idea that Alberta shouldn't leave. If they're being mistreated, they certainly should. I would want an abused woman to leave a relationship. So let's get that straight. Today, what I want to do is let's remove all of our op-eds, all of our opinions,
Sure,
and let people make up their minds based on what I told you I was going to be able to show you guys and your audience today is actually what was the problem with what happened that day with Keith. And it wasn't because Keith said anything wrong. It's that there's things that I felt like people needed to know. And while Keith did allude to it being a messy divorce and on and on and on, I think people just need to have, and especially for the people that are like me, that are a little bit OCD, and they need to know what the laws and what is the process look like. Things from the Constitutions Act. Does it say anything in our Constitution about secession? Things about what is the Clarity Act? Why was it formed? Well, it was formed because of the 1998 ruling on the 1995 failure of Quebec to secede from Canada. This was like ground shattering, right? There was no precedent for this before, and the ruling paved the way on, all right, let's clarify, not the Clarity Act, this is the Supreme Court, what is it going to take to be able to, for a province to leave, and what do we define as the steps necessary for a province to leave? Now, I will underscore this Albertans and any Canadian that the second any form of retaliatory violence comes into the conversation, you can literally forget everything I said. We're in the Wild West at this point. Let's not even talk about it anymore. But if we're talking about negotiating, doing laws, so for the record, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a constitutional lawyer. By any stretch of the imagination, I'm not an accredited historian. What I am is somebody that for 20 years has worked in PR, marketing, branding, consulting, crisis management. So I need to do a lot of research. And I've been doing this for, I'd say, about a month and a half, deep diving on nothing else and trolling people on X. But that's just to release some pressure, if you know what I mean, Shaun. That's the pressure valve release. But what I do is I read. I'm an avid reader, and I love researching, and I trust no one. Maybe that's the problem. I trust only Jesus Christ. That's it.
It's a good one
I don't
to trust.
I don't trust my mother. I don't trust my father. I don't trust my lawyer. I don't trust my accountant.
You don't trust your mother
anyone.
or your father?
I mean, not to the ultimate extent, right? Like that I have to double check, because here's the thing. People will spit out facts, Shaun. And I hear this sometimes from people on shows and so on and so forth. And they'll say it, and everyone will just take it like at face value. And then I'll go check it out, and it's completely full of shit, and it's not even remotely close, or you're leaving out contextually. So as a Christian, you understand that people can pull things out of the Bible and make it say whatever it wants to say, right? That's the problem. Another problem is that when then you go and you try to look up the context of what was being said, you end up finding out, wait a minute, the context varies very, very greatly from the actual meaning of what was being said. There's a friend of mine that had a mug, and I'm using this illustration, and I'll stop. On the mug, it had this verse from the Bible, you know, those Bible mugs and stuff like that. And this verse said, "And he will keep his angels over you to guard you so that you would not be hurt." And the citation was from the book of Matthew. That's said in Luke and Matthew. The problem is that verse from Matthew was when the devil was talking to Jesus. So that's when he was tempting him to jump off. So context matters, folks. I'm sorry. You know, you know how I always say facts don't care about your feelings? Well, it would be nice. I want Alberta to go. And I think there's a big possibility that it can happen. There is a way. I hate people saying there's no way. There is a way. But you need to know what that way is.
And I agree.
And
I agree.
And knowing Vesper, that way is the fire.
You know, if it's a new person to the show, you know, then you just got to do some digging on Vesper to like everything you're saying. You keep talking the way you're talking, we're going to go down the road of Jesus and a bunch of things I've been reading on that side. And I got a ton of time for that conversation right now, folks. Let me tell you, I got this new book. See that now you can pull me all the way over there. But where you want to go today, I think, is you want to go the other way. You want to talk about Alberta Independence. You want to walk us through. Listen, it's not that it's impossible, but everybody needs to get their facts straight. And this is what it looks like. So if you're going to keep the Jesus talk coming, I'm all for it. I'm telling you, we're hanging a left. I can hear the people. They're like, come on, Shaun, let them preach. Let them. I'm like,
no. There's no preaching here. This is for Albertans.
I know.
And for the rest of Canada.
I'm teasing. You know?
Good.
Teasing.
So without further ado, I mean, and by all means, stop me. Okay. I have these all bookmarked. There's going to be some reading today, but I'm a good reader. And I'm prolific in articulating what I need to say. But stop me at any point.
Sure.
There are really 3 documents that I think people need to be made aware of, okay? The first document would be the ruling by the Supreme Court in the 1998 Quebec, because that's where the rules were set out in 1998, after the 1995, okay? The second document is the Clarity Act. Now, what is the Clarity Act? The Clarity Act was invoked in 2000, the year 2000, to double down and clarify on what the 1998 ruling was. Okay, essentially, it's almost like a consolidation act of what the ruling was in 1998. And the final document is really our Constitution, the Constitutions Act between 1967 and 1982. Now, you're asking Vesper, or you can call me Eli, by the way, if you don't know me personally. But Vesper, what does the Constitution say about the secession? Surprisingly, nothing. There's nothing in the Constitution that even remotely brings up the idea of secession. What it does do, and there's only one real section that people need to know in the Constitution, is the amendment to the Constitution and how that works. Because in order for you to secede, you need to amend the Constitution of Canada. And, well, then how does that work? And that's the only reason you'd be going to the Constitutions Act, basically, or our Constitution. Is that clear so far?
Yeah.
Have I lost you on this, Shaun?
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in. The people are driving to work on a Wednesday morning, and I'm like, just grab your coffee. Vesper's going to do a little light reading today. We're going to find out about a few different acts, and then we're going to have a little fun discussing it. So welcome to Wednesday, folks. I'm sitting here with my coffee as well.
So let's jump into the Clarity Act. And why do I want to jump into the Clarity Act before we jump into the actual Quebec Ruling Act? Because it's long. It's long as hell. And
The Clarity Act is?
No, the Quebec Supreme Court. You know, remember when they tried to secede under a referendum? There are some things that I think is important to look at. And I'm sure if I asked you, you would read some of them, if you could see them. Let me know if you could see this, by the way.
Yep,
the
I can see it.
So this is the table of provisions in the Clarity Act of 2000. An act to give effect to the requirement for clarity set out in the opinion of the Supreme Court of Canada. So they weren't clear enough in the Supreme Court. They needed to make an act to make sure that it was really clear what they were trying to say. Okay. Does that already kind of give you a hint that nobody wants anyone to leave?
Correct.
We're trying to be clear.
Yes.
Okay. Why? You weren't clear before? No, we were, but we want to make it into an act. All right.
It sounds like government, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We can't just reduce red tape. We need a red tape minister to go reduce that red tape.
Yeah, we need to red tape the red tape that we just red taped.
Correct. Yes. This is yes. 100% understand what you mean.
So what is the opinion? Well, there were three things. House of Commons to consider the question. 2, House of Commons to consider whether there is a clear will to secede. And number 3, the constitutional amendments. We're going to get to that in a second. So I don't know if you can see this. Can you read these?
Yeah,
Are these
I can see it. Yep, absolutely.
So I want you to read at least the first preamble and the second, the yellow and the green.
You want me to read it aloud?
Because you have a buttery voice.
Ooh, I got a buttery voice. All right. Now, I guess I'm not the only one drinking coffee this morning. Enjoy, folks. Whereas the Supreme Court of Canada has confirmed that there is no right under international law or under the Constitution of Canada for the National Assembly, Legislature, or Government of Quebec to effect the succession of Quebec from Canada unilaterally.
So let's all keep this in mind. This word unilateral is a no non-starter. It's a no bueno, apparently, in the laws. The idea of unilateral does not exist. Okay, that's in the law. Go.
Whereas the government of any province of Canada is entitled to consult its population by referendum or any issue and is entitled to formulate the wording of its referendum question.
That's good. So there is this deference, right, to the province that you guys have your rights. Now, how do we balance the rights of the province versus the rights of the federal government? And the way that they did it, Shaun, is that they didn't just bring in the federal government. They brought in the rest of Canada into this, right? So again, I will highlight, if we're talking about full-scale rebellion, forget everything I'm saying. But if we're going to stay within the jurisdiction of the law, this is what the law says. The Supreme Court of Canada has determined that the result of a referendum on the secession of a province from Canada must be free of ambiguity. That's something I know Keith is going to absolutely, if he's involved, going to make sure that that's not going to be ambiguous, okay? Both in terms of the question asked and in terms of the support it achieves if that result is to be taken as an expression of the democratic will that will give rise to an obligation to enter into negotiations that might lead to secession. The Supreme Court of Canada has stated that democracy means more than simple majority rule. Do you understand what that means, Shaun? Just because you do a referendum and you get 50%, they're going to question things like, okay, 50% of what? How many people voted? They're going to look for every reason to disqualify this, for every reason. Okay. And it's important that Albertans understand this, and any province that ever wants to secede, you must have, of the population, a majority. And so in some way, like we were saying off camera, I'm not here to throw water on this. I'm here to say, you want to know what it's going to take? It's going to take a majority, not just a majority, because if 3 people vote and 2 people will say yes, that's not even on the table. I'm being hyperbolic here.
Yeah.
You need a majority. And what constitutes that majority? Well, we'll continue. The Supreme Court of Canada has confirmed that in Canada, the secession of a province to be lawful would require an amendment to the Constitution of Canada. That such an amendment would per force require negotiations in relations to secession involving at least the governments of all the provinces and the government of Canada. I don't know if you knew that, Shaun. You need all the provinces and the federal government. That's cited in the Clarity Act. Okay? And that those negotiations would be governed by the principle of federalism, democracy, constitutionalism, and the rule of law, and the protection of minorities. The area that I want to just jump to here, things to consider. Now, do you want to read these? This is important to read, okay?
In considering the clarity of a referendum question, the House of Commons shall consider whether the question would result in a clear expression of the will of the population of a province on whether the province should cease to be a part of Canada and become an independent state. Where no clear expression of will, for the purpose of subsection 3, a clear expression of the will of the population of a province that the province cease to be a part of Canada could not result from a referendum question that merely focuses on a mandate to negotiate without soliciting a direct expression of the will of the population of that province on whether the province should cease to be a part of Canada, or a referendum question that, oh man, what is that word?
Envisages.
What the heck does envisages mean?
Like shows, it demonstrates, it paints a picture.
God, why do they have to use... Okay. Anyways.
Red tape, bro. Red tape.
A referendum
red
question
tape.
that envisages other possibilities in addition to the secession of the province from Canada, such as economic or political arrangements with Canada that obscure a direct expression of the will of the population of the province on whether the province should cease to be a part of Canada.
So let's clarify, guys. And Shaun, expression means majority vote. That's it. Clear question, that's easy. Clear expression is what is clearly the expressed views of this province. And it's not on X, it's not on YouTube, it's not on, it is when they go to vote, how many vote, and how many vote how. Now, this is where it's bizarre, because there is no number set out. There have been people that have speculated that are constitutional experts and lawyers, like Peter Hoggs and all these people. But here's the thing. If you're dealing with the East now, guys, right? You're dealing with a government ruled by the Laurentians, and they're not about to have their cash cow leave, period. Okay? Why would I do that? And okay, fine. You want to leave? You better make it so that there is no denying that you have the complete will of Alberta behind you. And there is no act, no sovereignty act, no nothing. That just protects you guys from legislation from the federal government. But when it comes to secession, it has already been ruled that there is a way to do this democratically and constitutionally, right? It's not that it's a no, it's that it has to be a hell yeah. It can't be yes. It can't be we're almost there. It can't be let's go. It's got to be hell yeah. Like everybody is like wanting to get out. And by everybody, I mean, I'm shooting a broad number here. It's got to be at minimum 60%. Okay. And I'm telling you, like 60%, not of half the population, 60% of the population. Okay. Because they're going to look for every loophole, Shaun, to make sure that you have not properly represented the will of every Albertan and minority. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Actually, what I'm finding interesting about your train of thought, Vesper, if I may, is one of the things, and I want to keep reading, so forgive me for probably pulling us off.
No. Go, dude. Come on. I'm enjoying this.
Well, one of the things I've said to Albertans in my different conversations with different people who are inside the movement, around the movement, just in general, is it's like, you want to leave Canada? You really want to leave Canada? Okay. Did you see what they did to the people in Ottawa that went and stood up to that government? Oh wait, they're finding, like, Tamara and Chris are still on trial while they're supposed to be finding out the results here this week. I'm like, and now you want to go against that and take the cash cow? Everything you just said? I'm like, if we don't have this conversation, what we're having right now, you're not going to understand how they're going to attack you. They're going to attack you in every loophole, moronic thing, unless it goes on full scale like what we're talking about. People pick up arms. That's not what we're saying. But if it went that way, that's an entirely different conversation. Completely different.
Oh, yeah. We're not even in the purview of that conversation.
No, we're talking about the ways of the law and how it works. And when
and listen, and when Keith comes back on, he's going to give you from a lawyer's perspective, and he is a very seasoned lawyer and a very intellectual man. He is able to break down, like in hockey, right? Like there's the theory of hockey, but then there's like getting on the ice and playing hockey, right?
Correct.
That's Keith. Keith is on the ice. What my job here is to show you what Keith will be using and contending with.
Yeah, what he'll be up against.
Albertan. Right. And this is where I disagreed with Keith. And I think Keith agreed with me too, that he needs to shed light, not necessarily that it's impossible, but what are the hurdles before us? Now, I can respect Keith because I believe what he's stating is true, that if the Liberals win, this is devastating for Alberta.
I think it's devastating for Canada.
No, not so much as for Canada. Like, look, les Québécois like me there, we are going to be okay because we control everything in Ottawa. But you Albertans, you're going to get decimated in the very thing you guys are known for, energy, is going to get decimated.
But forgive me, Vesper, because maybe I'm wrong on this, and maybe you'll be like, no, that's not the way it'll go down. But when I look at Carney and what he represents, the higher up the food chain you go, if he attacks Alberta in the way we think he can attack us, or that he has written about, getting rid of, the energy and just for things, where does the cash cow come from? Well, it doesn't come from just good people. It doesn't come from sunshine and rainbows. It comes from what's underneath our feet and what we do as a group of human beings out west. That's where the money comes from. And so if you attack that, what eventually happens is you're attacking yourself. Because
not really, because we have Hydro Quebec.
But all the money would I be wrong?
I know, but
no.
Here's the thing.
Okay.
We already have that money. We're just leveraging this very broken system, dude. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I got $1 million in my pocket, but I want your $1 million.
Yes. This is where I'm like, we're going to keep doing this, but this is where I'm like, Ben Trudeau, who was on, what was that, 3 weeks ago, folks? I can't remember. Forgive me. It's been, on this side a little hectic, but he's like, referendums aren't won on stats and that. It's one on emotion. And what I see percolating now, me and you have talked lots about the fact that, like when I look at this, I go like, everywhere Pierre goes, he's beloved right now. It's just like thousands upon thousands of people showing up to every event he does. Everywhere Carney goes, it's the complete, is there people showing up?
By the way, all this stuff, all this 51st state annexation, secession stuff, Pierre wins, it's all over.
Yeah, I agree.
Mark my words. Let's continue reading this, because this is the point of this. I don't want to get off track on this. No disrespect.
No.
I know it's your show, but it's so that we don't lose where this was supposed to go. And I want the viewers.
This is why you can't bring me in a conversation. I'm going to sip my coffee. Let's go back to margarine reading, please.
No. I want to talk. I want to do this after we're done, because all this is us talking. I don't want us to have our views. I want to read
Folks,
to people.
Margarine is
Margarine
going to talk. I'm going to go back to
Margarine's going to
Okay.
talk.
Carry on.
So this one is called Other Views to be Considered. We're still in the Clarity Act. In considering the clarity of a referendum question, the House of Commons shall take into account the views of all political parties represented in the Legislative Assembly of the province whose government is proposing the referendum on secession. Any formal statement or resolutions by the government or Legislative Assembly of any province or territory of Canada, any formal statements or resolutions by the representatives of the Aboriginal peoples of Canada, especially those in provinces whose government is proposing the referendum on secession, and any other views it considers relevant. This is what is to be considered. Now watch this. You read the next part. No negotiations if question is not clear.
The government of Canada shall not enter in negotiations on the terms on which a province might cease to be a part of Canada if the House of Commons determines, pursuant to this section, that a referendum question is not clear and for the reasons would not result in a clear expression of the will of the population of that province on whether the province should cease to be a part of Canada. So no clear question, they're not letting you out. They're not even going to entertain it.
Not even. So let's make also something clear. Remember we said unilateral? The Supreme Court has ruled there is no unilateral. Essentially, and I'm sorry to say this, a referendum is essentially a glorified petition that represents and expresses the will of the population, but it's really just a petition. Now, it's not just a regular petition. It can't be ignored. There are laws that the Supreme Court has stated that you cannot deny this number. This is not just, oh, we'll take it into consideration. This is if you give me 60 to 70% of Albertans want to leave, yeah, that's when it stops being a petition. And that's when it's like, no, I'm sorry. The Supreme Court will side with Albertans. Do you understand? It's not skewed so that it's like, okay, we'll take it into consideration. No, they're going to do audits. They're going to investigate. They're going to do all this stuff. But 70% of Albertans, like what's your population in Alberta right now? What do you have? 4 million?
No, it's closer to
3 million?
5. Actually, I think the last time I had Danielle on, which has been a while, I think she said we're over 5.
So let's assume about 3 million are adults, right? Let's assume 2 million vote yes. Let's go, right? That's 2/3, 66%. They're going to go, okay, how many let me show you an example what it would look like. How many of those are Aboriginal? Holy cow. Are we going to sit down now and count who are the Aboriginal voters? Like, okay, let's say you guys are smart and said Aboriginals vote like this. Wait, that's racist. You can't make a different line for You see where this goes?
Yeah, I do.
So then they do this and you get a 66%. Say you get a 70%. This is where the Supreme Court goes, hold on. I don't care if yo mama, yo papa, yo Uncle Theo, I don't care who it is from any Aboriginal tribe. 70% of Alberta said we want out. All right, start negotiations. That's how it's going to work. It's not. They're just going to just make sure that the 70% is legit.
I want you to keep reading because otherwise you're going to pull me back in this. It doesn't matter if you get 90%. They're going to try and find a way to frame this like you didn't get.
They can.
Yes,
they can.
You're going.
They're going to say like the 10% wasn't Aboriginal.
Go back to my conversation about Ottawa or my comment on Ottawa. You're going against the same machine. You're going against it.
No, I know. But we have to be a little bit, let's pull back a little bit. The Supreme Court did rule that the Emergencies Act was illegal. We need to bring Canadians back to a place where, yes, there is a lot of capture. Let's not deny it. But there are some things that we got wins for. We got some wins.
Yes.
And we can't be completely divorced from a win. Like the Supreme Court deemed that the Emergencies Act was illegal and they're appealing it and they're not going to win it. Now, what consequences that are, I don't know. But the point is, there are wins. The Supreme Court
the table is being set. If you didn't have Quebec do what it did in the 90s, you wouldn't have the Clarity Act. You wouldn't have these things that set out maybe how a province could secede.
Right. Well, this is now look. So this is factors of the House. This is Section 2 now of the Clarity Act. Factors for House of Commons to take into account. So, guys, the way it works is once you have your referendum, it goes, these are the people that have, and this it's found in the Constitution Act. Because remember, you now want to secede, an amendment to the Constitution of Canada must occur. And the way that that occurs is that there are rules for that. And I'll just show it to you real quick, okay? Here it is. This is the Constitutions Act, Section 41. Can you read this, Shaun, or do you want me to read
an
it?
amendment. Scroll just.
Hold on. Yeah. I'll scroll it just so you can see it.
Yeah, there you go. An amendment to the Constitution of Canada in relation to the following matters may be made.
Well, hold on. Read the header so the people listening understand what the title of this is.
Amendment by unanimous consent.
Unanimity. Unanimous. It must be unanimous. Keep going.
An amendment to the Constitution of Canada in relation to the following matters may be made by proclamation issued by the Governor General under the Great Seal of Canada, only where authorized by resolutions of Senate and House of Commons and of the Legislative Assembly of each province. Okay,
so hold on. How many things did you just count?
Governor General,
Senate,
House of Commons, and Legislative Assembly. 4
of each province. So each province. That's 4. So there's 4 actors here involved. Okay, keep going.
A, the office of the Queen, the Governor General, and the Lieutenant Governor of a province. B, the right of the province to number of members in the House of Commons, not less than the number of senators by which the province is entitled to be represented at the time this part comes into force. C, subject to Section 43, the use of the English or the French language. D, the composition of the Supreme Court of Canada. And E, an amendment to this part.
So you have 4 actors. This is no longer the Clarity Act. This is the Constitutions Act of 1967 to 1982. In order to change the Constitution, should you win that majority overwhelmingly, these 4 actors will be the ones that will be reviewing your referendum numbers. The Supreme Court actually goes on and says things, and I'll show you in a minute, where they actually extricate themselves from the whole process. Now, there's going to be court battles, but the Supreme Court will not re-dive into the redefining of these. They actually will leave it to what they call the political actors. Okay, Shaun? But let's just go back to the Clarity Act just to kind of sum this up, okay? Where no expression of will, for the purposes of subsection 3, a clear expression of the will of the population of a province that the province ceased to be part of Canada could not result from A, a referendum question that merely focuses on a mandate to negotiate without soliciting a direct expression of the will of the population of that province on whether the province should cease to be part of Canada. B, a referendum question that, we did this one. Hold on a second. No, we did that one. We did that one. We did that one. Constitutional amendments. This is Section 3 of the Clarity Act. It is recognized that there is no right under Constitution of Canada to effect the secession of a province from Canada unilaterally, and that therefore an amendment to the Constitution of Canada would be required for any province to secede from Canada, which in turn would require negotiations involving at least the governments of all the provinces and the government of Canada. So we've already done this, okay? Limitations. No minister of the Crown shall propose a constitutional amendment to effect the secession of a province from Canada unless the government of Canada has addressed in its negotiations the terms of secession. So far it sounds like, Vesper, you're making this sound like it's impossible. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm trying to show Albertans that you want to win this. Y'all better get up, mosey on down, and get mobile. Because what's going to have to happen is we're not talking about you guys are going to win because you just bitch about it on X like I do. But you're going to get up and you're going to go and you're going to get political on this. You know what I mean? You better get up and really, if you really want this, you can have it. But it's going to take every single one of you to understand that your province is in jeopardy. Now, I don't know that from my cursory look at your demographic, Shaun, in Alberta, it seems that the youngins, the 18 to 34-year-olds, seem to be the most vocal majority. At the moment, you guys are not remotely in majority territory in terms of this whole argument. Can that happen? Yeah. Should it happen? I think it should have happened yesterday. I think you guys should be already at 50%, because let's be frank. I mean, Quebec wants to secede because Quebec is corrupt as, I don't know, a dead body. But Alberta is not trying to leave because they're corrupt. Alberta is trying to leave because of the corruption that is coming to it, right? So I've asked this question before Twos was on the show. I said, if y'all are so adamant about like this whole Alberta, I'm like, why isn't it that you guys haven't formed a majority and gotten the hell out already? And no one can answer that question because, frankly, it's a human problem. Everyone needs to get up and go. But let's not derail this. I'm done with the Clarity Act, by the way. The limitations and all that stuff is done. I do want to show you one or two places. I don't want to make this a, what do you call it, an audio podcast, whatever you want to call it. I want this to be something that is profoundly clear for people. And we have to go now to the Quebec ruling, because there's some things in the Quebec ruling that I don't think people know. And it's important that people know this. So in the Quebec ruling in 1998, they say some things that are explicitly clear about what the principles of federalism are, and on and on and on and on and on. But it's important to start out with, what is the task of the court, right, that was doing all this? The task of the court has been to so this is the Quebec ruling in 1998 about Quebec wanting to secede from Canada, and they lost. But the Supreme Court was forced on, because they were, Quebec, tried to get like, hey, we got a almost majority, come on, like, and they were like, no, we need to clarify this. What is it that we need to clarify? That we have to make it clear. And then they made the Clarity Act, but they did make it clear in the ruling. They just needed to simplify it in the Clarity Act and make it an act. Red tape over red tape. The task of the court has been to clarify the legal framework within which political decisions are to be taken under the Constitution, not to usurp the prerogatives of the political forces that operate within that framework. The obligations we have identified, these are the Supreme Court judges, are binding obligations under the constitutions of Canada. However, it will be for the political actors. Remember I told you about this, Shaun? It will be for the political actors to determine what constitutes a clear majority on a clear question. So it's not the judges. Guess what happens if you take it to court? They will tell you it's not up to us. It's up to the politicians, and it's up to the people. We're not getting involved. Now, can we debate some things in court? Of course, but they will not be the deciding factor here. Look at how they threw it back, basically, to the actors, okay, to determine what constitutes a clear majority on a clear question in the circumstances under which a future referendum vote may be taken. Equally, in the event of a demonstrated majority, support for Quebec or Alberta secession, in this case would be, the content and process of the negotiations will be for the political actors to settle. The reconciliation of the various legitimate constitutional interests is necessarily committed to the political rather than the judicial realm, precisely because that reconciliation can only be achieved through the give and take of the political negotiations. To the extent issues addressed in the course of the negotiations are political, the courts, appreciating their proper role in the constitutional scheme, would have what? No supervisory role. So here's another kind of thing that y'all need to know. If y'all get a 65% majority, I think that's enough. But let's say the Laurentian elite government goes, yeah, no. And you guys come back with, what do you mean no? We're going to take this to court. Okay, you can take it to court. No problem. And you will demonstrate, that we have the will of the people and blah, 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 and that the court and the federal government is being basically unfair, and they stand to, there's a massive conflict. They stand to profit heavily off of Alberta, and on and on and on and on and on. And then they ask the judges to rule on this. The judges are not going to rule on the legitimacy of your referendum. What they're going to rule on is if whether or not the lawyers coming against, let's say, the federal government are making a good case, but they will not rule, oh, this is a majority. You guys effed up. Sorry, Canada. Alberta gets to leave. I hope this is clear. I've been talking a lot. I don't mean to do that. I think it's just important so that people understand the Supreme Court has already stated that that it is not up to them to be the deciding factors. It is up to the political actors that are going to be involved to determine this. All they can do is whether or not they're like refs, right? They're not going to, side with one guy or the other. They're there to just uphold the rules, so to speak, quote unquote, hopefully, right? Unbiasedly, right? No, nothing, no chicanery happening, but they're there to just, here are the boundaries of the game. These are the rules. Don't ask us to tell you who wins. It's the two teams that are going to decide who wins. Now, if using, I don't know if you want to use a hockey or basketball metaphor, if high sticking goes up, we'll chime in. If somebody, I don't know, give me another example in hockey.
Well, yeah, if you get into a fight or
right, we'll
penalty.
Chime in.
Yeah,
right, we'll chime in, but don't ask us to say, the Flames beat the Oilers. They're never going to do that.
Yeah, it's laid out right there that they're going to push it back to the political actors. It's funny they even say political actors.
Right. Now, the other thing that's really important here is look at how they define this. In another section, and this is, I could tell you what section this is. And by the way, I could reference this. This is 57. The underlying principle of federalism, then, has exercised the role of considerable importance in the interpretation of the written provisions of our Constitution. In the patriation reference, supra, we confirm that the principle of federalism runs through the political and legal systems of Canada. Indeed, and they cite people like Martland, dissenting in the patrician, blah, 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 considered federalism to be the dominant principle of Canadian constitutional law with the enactment of the Charter. That preposition may have less force than it once did, but there can be little doubt that the principle of federalism remains a central organizational theme of our Constitution. Less obviously, perhaps, but certainly of equal importance, federalism is a political and legal response to underlying social and political realities. The principle of federalism recognizes the diversity of the component parts of the Confederation and the autonomy of provincial governments to develop their societies within their respective spheres of jurisdiction. The federal structure of our country also facilitates democratic participation by distributing power to the government thought to be most suited to achieving that particular society. And then if you read here, look what it says. Not to weld the provinces into one, nor to subordinate provincial governments to a central authority, but to establish a central government in which these provinces should be represented, entrusted with exclusive authority only in affairs in which they had common interests. Subject to this, each province was to retain its independence and autonomy and directly under the crown as its head. This is where your Sovereignty Act falls in. Does that make sense? They are not saying that you guys cannot rule Alberta, but it needs to fall within a greater framework of federalism and constitutionalism. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I guess where my brain is at, and forgive me, Vesper, if I'm jumping things. I go, I think what I'm learning from you today, right, is it's reinforcing you need a clear question with a clear majority to get a referendum or to have a successful referendum. Forgive me. But let's say you get 70%, 66%, whatever the percentage is, right? 2/3. It's not going to be the courts that come down and go, okay, you can just leave. It's going to be pushed back to the political actors, which means you're going to have to deal with Ottawa and all the other provinces on how that even remotely goes from there.
Let's take it back to your favorite subject, hockey. The Flames blow out the Habs 7-2. Any debate?
No. In hockey, there will be debate. In politics, there will be debate.
No. What I mean is, with a 7-2, is anyone going to debate the score?
No, if it was 10-0, nobody debates the score.
Now, can someone play? Now, this is the what 2 is called the Frank Castle in me that comes up, the Punisher,
Sure.
who reads the snakes. Okay. Have you ever watched The Longest Yard with Adam Sandler?
Sure.
Do you remember when like he was just playing his first game with his thugs from prison and the ref was paid off to like completely help the guards? He could tell in the first 2 like huts, like this guy is literally been paid off to help the other team. So he's giving us all the bad calls and giving them all the good calls. And you remember he took that football and threw it square into his nuts. And then he did it again. And then he says, "Are you going to start calling the game fairly now?" "Yeah. All right, good." And then he gave him a wet willy. The whole point is the refs on the ice with a 7-2 win. The question will no longer be, did they win? Other doubts will then arise. Well, what if the game was rigged? We can go down this road ad nauseum, and I don't want to, because God knows that it's going to take forever to untangle this. But please understand, fellow Canadians, Albertans, even though I'm a Quebecer, I really have said before, I set this country above any province. There is look at Shaun, man. He's on the other side of the world. I'm on the opposite side. We're not even sharing the same time zone. And honestly, Shaun would be like a brother to me. Twos would be like a brother to me. It was never, and even the convoy showed that. We got Quebecers coming, meeting with Westerners. They broke down that lie, and that's what upset the establishment. This lie that the West is against the East. Well, you saw it in the convoy that we were unified. Well, they can't have that, can they? So the issue is never East and West. It's Eastern governments and the elite that are usurping the people of the West and utilizing all the loopholes they can.
This is a problem or a story of time. This has been going on in different stories or different examples for all of time. This isn't people. I agree 100% with you. And when I look at this, I go, what I've been saying over and over again is like, I think it's important we understand how they will attack us. Because if you go down this road, right, you play out this theory that Carney gets elected, and then everybody can see it. You can just see it as it gets closer, and people start to worry about it. Like, is this a psyop? He isn't really going to win. If he wins, or they put him in place, or whatever word you want to tack onto it, the thing that will happen on April 28th, and for sure the following week, there will be this wave of anger, and you can just see it.
Well, listen, this is the last thing we're going to read. There's so much more, but I think I've galvanized people to look into the Clarity Act,
sure,
the ruling of 1998 for themselves. I'm not telling people what to believe. I'm telling people this is where you find the information. This is section 96 of that Supreme Court ruling of Quebec, which, by the way, is a precedent now for Alberta. I want you to read this because it demonstrates the mindset of the Supreme Court. And I'm going to read one other thing about it that came years later by an invitee to the Supreme Court that shared her thoughts in retrospect. But this is very important for you to read, Shaun, if you don't mind reading.
Can you just slide it a little bit?
Yeah, I will.
It says, no one can predict the course that such negotiations might take. The possibility that they might not lead to an agreement amongst the parties must be recognized. Negotiations following a referendum vote in favor of seeking secession would vote in favor of seeking secession would inevitably address a wide range of issues, many of great import.
Now watch this. This is the point that I felt like, whoa, why are you putting this in here?
After 131 years of confederation, there exists inevitably a high-level integration in economic, political, and social institutions across Canada. The vision of those who brought about confederation was to create an unified country, not a loose alliance of autonomous provinces. Accordingly, while there are regional economic interests which sometimes coincide with provincial boundaries, there are also nationwide interests and enterprises, both public and private, that would face potential dismemberment.
Keep going. Keep going.
There is a national economy and national debt. Arguments were raised before us regarding boundary issues. There are linguistic and cultural minorities, including Aboriginal peoples, unevenly distributed across the country, who look to the Constitution of Canada for the protection of their rights. Of course, secession would give rise to many issues of great complexity and difficulty. These would have to be resolved within the overall framework of the rule of law, thereby assuring Canadians resident in Quebec and elsewhere a measure of stability in what would likely be a period of considerable upheaval and uncertainty. Nobody seriously suggests that our national existence, seamless in so many aspects, could be effortlessly separated along what are now the provincial boundaries of Quebec, as the Attorney General of Saskatchewan put it in his oral submission.
A nation is built when the communities that comprise it make commitments to it, when they forego choices and opportunities on behalf of a nation, when the communities that comprise it make compromises, when they offer each other guarantees, when they make transfers, and perhaps most pointedly, when they receive from others the benefits of national solidarity. The threads of 1,000 acts of accommodation are the fabric of a nation. I'll stop there and I'll go back to my beautiful face. So what are we dealing with here, Shaun? What do you think we're ultimately dealing with?
Well, my wife said it to me the other day while laying in bed. She's like, they're not going to let you leave. They're just not going to let you leave. And
I'm not saying that.
Well, I think Albertans better get on better understand that. Like, come on, Vesper. I know you're not saying that, but let's all be real here. Oh, you go out and you have a nice vote. Oh, wait, we did that. 60-some% wanted to get rid of equalization payments. Anybody talking about that? Is anybody talking about that? No, they're not. Why? Because it wouldn't help Pierre Poilievre get elected. And then we'd have Carney. I mean, fuck me. Pardon the French. It's like David Parker. David Parker has said this lots, and I know there's a divergence on the name David Parker, but politics is not a spectator sport. You need people to be involved, and if you're going to separate from a country, you best believe people need to be involved. And if you're going to be involved, then the next thing you better get ready for is the machine coming after you. That is proof in the pudding. Convoy, you can just see it. Coots, you can see it. They're going to search out any which way they can do to undo it because they don't want it. And we have just read off for the first, on and off an hour, the different ways in which they've caused confusion into a relatively simple thing. You'd think if you got a clear majority with a clear question, we want out, just let us out. But that isn't going to be what happens.
By the way, so this is the last thing I told you I was going to read that was in retrospect.
And if I may, Vesper, sorry, now I'll put it to you in a sports analogy that people in Lloyd specifically can fully understand. Because you said it's a human problem at one point. Why haven't we left? I'm on a baseball board. I was saying this before we started. Okay. Lloyd is Alberta and Saskatchewan, half and half. So if you live onto the Saskatchewan side, just out of town, and you want to play AAA baseball, AAA hockey, it gets really confusing because the closest Saskatchewan place is an hour and a half away. Meanwhile, you're 5 minutes from it. And you'd think grown adults would be able to be like, no, why would we make somebody drive an hour and a half? That's not okay.
You would think.
That's not okay. Let's be grown adults here. Let's sign a piece of paper and let them go play 5 minutes. And for the love of God, be maybe considerate of the parents there. But human beings have made a mess of this. And I'm probably making it more simple than it needs to be. But
no, you're actually not. You're actually not.
If a kid wants to go play,
denominator is that.
So we wonder why this is. You better buckle up for the insanity that will ensue if you vote 80% to leave and Canada doesn't want you to go. Well, we've already
I mean,
seen in
think
the
about
last
it.
5 years what's going to happen. And my career in sports, and now as a parent starting to see it, we already understand this. We all do.
I mean, did you see how in the Supreme Court ruling of Quebec, why would you need to invoke the historicity of Canada? What are you trying to imply? Under 131 years of Confederacy, it was never the intention of Canada to be a loose set of provinces. We were supposed to be a nation. Like this Saskatchewan premier said, everyone's got to make sacrifices for the greater good. Dude, do you know what that sounds like? That sounds like a guy that got married. And so I'll take Keith's analogy. It's a messy divorce. Dude, it's not a messy divorce. It's a lopsided messy divorce. Let's say you're the woman, okay? Alberta's the wife. She wants to leave the abusive husband. Well, the abusive husband has everything under his name. And the abusive husband is going to bring in dirty lawyers. And the abusive husband can rewrite all the papers he wants. He can do everything he can. The only thing the wife can do is demonstrate through the will of the people of Alberta, and I know I'm not supposed to say this as a Christian, 2 fingers with a majority that leaves no doubt. And that majority does not need to be a figure like you think, like a 62.3. The idea is that if you have a population of 3 million, we said, adults that can vote, 3.5 million, if 2.5 million vote, and they're going to try to like slow this down. By the way, remember Brexit?
Yes.
So Brexit, with not 131 years of Confederacy, right? Like what, 20 years in the Euro? Wanted to get out, want to vote. Brussels flipped out. Brussels stalled them for a year and a half and said, by the way, it was completely legit. Even, do you remember Cameron, the prime minister? He stepped down, said, if they win, if it's a yes, I step down. Like he was betting on it like an idiot. And then like Nigel Farage basically said, there's the door, bro, out. But what happened? You would have thought that negotiations would have taken place and it would have taken them maybe a year for the UK to get out of the Euro. No. What happened was it took a year of all the technocrats out in the Euro, all the corrupt warmongers and all these people, which encompass people like the WEF, the WHO, all these oligarchs and globalists and asset management, banking, invest, blah, 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 blah. They stalled them for a year and made them do something that I could not believe. Do you remember what they did? They made them do a second vote. That is abusive. Oh, well, we're not so sure that the vote truly captured the will of the UK public. Just to make sure, let's make a second vote. No, that's not written in any article of the United Nations. You just breached your own articles. Because the UK, we can't have you leave. Well, we're going to leave. So they actually did it. My God, it's almost like the UK went, all right, mofos, you want a second vote? Even though it's not legal, no problem. They gave them a second vote and they won the second vote. Yay, we're out. No, you're not. 3 years stalled in negotiations and then they're out. And that's for a country that only was in the Euro for something like 2 decades, maybe more. You could fact check me. I don't care. But it wasn't 131 years in a confederacy. I mean, what is the Euro? It's a confederacy. I don't care what you call it. It's a confederacy of nations. Okay? So why did it take England, after 2 referendum votes, victories, it took them, 5 years collectively to get out? Why? You would think that it would have been simple. We won the majority. Now F off. Nope. It's going to take a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of interests, the economic impact on the rest of the Euro, blah, 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 blah. You abandoning your Euro, going back to the dollar and the pound and blah, blah, blah. If that is one country trying to leave one confederacy that was there for less than 20 years and all the chicanery that the Euro was pulling on the UK, what do you think is going to happen in Canada? The Senate, the House of Commons are to rule on this. The provinces, do you think in a million years my province is going to say, let them go? They want to go, let them go. No, they will not say let them go. Ontario will say don't let them go. Nova Scotia will say don't let them go. No one's going to say let them go. You know who's going to be your only partner in this win? The referee. You need to show the ref beyond a shadow of a doubt. They're going to pull out, the cameras when they want to check if if there was any kind of in the goal, right? They want to see if the puck actually slid in legally. They want to make sure there was no high sticking. They're going to look for everything. And what's going to end up happening is, at the end of the day, the Supreme Court is not going to be able to deny its eyes and the argument that you have a majority, Alberta. If you want out, all of you get off your butts and go and support this, because it's not going to happen with a minority of people voting and that being a majority.
I agree.
You can't have 1 million Albertans, 70% of 1 million. It doesn't work that way. The way it works is all of Alberta is going to be taken into consideration. And then they're going to say, is that the will of the province? That's what was my initial contention with Keith, but it's been resolved. He and I have talked. I love Keith. And I just wanted to light a fire under everybody that if you want this, go get it. I'm a Quebecer. I stand to win. I should be saying, ha ha, losers, sucks for you. Stay where you are. Give me all my money. Do you understand? But I'm not saying that. I'm saying you want to win, you must galvanize everybody and their mother.
Vesper, you mind making your screen full again? I'm looking at you like a little tiny corner out of this headline. There you are. There you are.
My apologies. All I'm saying to you is this. That's it.
No. Listen. We're on the same page on this.
I know.
I look at this and I go, you want out, you need to galvanize the population. You were talking about the abused woman. It's like, well, the only option she has is to appeal to the people. And what I see happening is I see this table being set. You go back to the Clarity Act, the Clear Question happened in the 90s. And it was set up for Quebec. Now, maybe back then people are like, oh man, if we ever get just the right things happening, Alberta will be right in line. I'm sure there are Albertans that have been waiting for this moment for a long freaking time. But it isn't because of the 10%, the 2%, the 30%, whatever that percentage is, that have been waiting for this. It's because of the common person. The common person is starting to talk about this. And they're starting to talk about this every single day now. And the table is being set with a whole bunch of things. COVID was just one piece that had to have been played in order to get us to where we're at. It's actually, we look at COVID for all the negatives that came of it, because there was a lot. But one of the positives it did is it's put in play the fact that we're sitting here less than a month away from an election. And if Carney gets hand selected to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, it's going to galvanize the population. It is. Now, is it going to be enough? I don't know. I can't sit here and say I've been wrong lots on this show. But if there ever was a time, it seems like all the things are being set at the table to make it happen. Now, it's kind of the argument I have against PPCers. I'm like, if you want it, there's supposedly close to 1 million of you who voted last time. Go out and take it. Like, what are we waiting for? I don't get it.
But
now, when it comes,
but do you understand what the purpose of this meeting and that why I wanted to get on the show was not because of what you're saying is wrong. It's I feel like Albertans don't understand the chips are stacked against you constitutionally. Yes. In the Supreme Court, they made it very difficult, not impossible. You definitely need not a majority of people that are in an echo chamber that want to go. You need to get all Albertans together to get out. Because if you don't get Albertans, all of them to get out, in fact, I would almost say whatever parties you have in Alberta, in an ideal situation, they would drop their allegiances and just be Albertans.
Yeah, well, now you're talking the human condition, man.
No, but hold on. Think about that. If the NDP dropped it and made it Alberta first, let's say you had a party called Alberta First, and the NDP people backed out. The conservative people backed out. The whatever is left.
Who's
PPC,
living in a
name
fantasy
them.
right now?
Whoa! I'm showing you something. Do you understand? It may sound like a fantasy.
It does.
But you tell me, in what world will you get 60% of the population, adult voting population, and that's a minimum. That's a minimum to get out. Short of, and you and I are both on the same page, violence is never an answer. But you know what? Sometimes, even in the Declaration of Independence of the United States, sometimes it is incumbent upon the citizens to take up arms against the usurpation of governments. It happens, man. It's a reality. I come from Lebanon, dude. It's a war zone till now, right? The Middle East is a freaking active war zone. It's a ticking time bomb constantly. Canada has just been very safe, and nobody's ever ruffled any feathers, and we just like hockey and Adam Sandler and Jim Carrey and all that BS. But point is, the Albertans are existentially in a economic threat. They've been in a threat, and now they're going to get into a worse threat. I actually pulled numbers. I don't know if you want to hear this. I pulled some numbers on the likelihoods of how bad it'll get if the Liberals get in. You mind me sharing this?
No, give her.
So I went through, like, beyond, like, you know, like the AI models and the whatever. I actually pulled up the charts and did a mean average based on the likelihood and approximation. Get this. And it's in a table. I need to send you this table. So likelihood and outcome and approximations for what would happen to Alberta. Oil and gas regulations increase. The likelihood of it being very bad is between 75 to 90. Negative for traditional energy. It's high. So there's very high, moderate, low. Equalization will remain unchanged. Likelihood, very high, 90%. Alberta, Ottawa tensions rise. It's at high. It's at 80%. Wexit movement gains traction. Moderate, 40 to 50%. See, that's what I'm shocked at. This should be high. That's going to scare Ottawa. That will probably help you with the equalization stuff. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, if that was high, I mean, you now have you have the leverage. Cost of living increases due to carbon tax, high, 70 to 85%. New social programs introduced, that is set to moderate. It's between 50 to 60. It will all depend on a conclusionary tax, basically, on whether or not they're going to include more programs. If the Liberals win, basically, Alberta will likely experience a greater economic and political tensions with Ottawa, especially concerning energy and taxation. However, increased federal spending on social programs could provide some relief. The probability of secession remains very low, but dissatisfaction with federal policies could increase. And this is where I'm trying to say, and this is where what I had with Keith was I wanted you to make more clarity, and he's acknowledged that while we've talked, that maybe he could be a little bit more clear on the hurdles. There's nothing he said that was wrong. It was, in my estimation, it just needed this side that we talked about this morning. All these rules and what you guys are up against, like we were up against in Quebec, that set the precedent with the Supreme Court to clarify. And the problem is, and Keith was right when we were talking, he said, what is that number? It's ambiguous. Why was it left ambiguous? Why do you think, Shaun?
Oh, simple. They don't want you to go. So if they give you a clear number and you hit it, they have to let you go. If you don't give a clear number, then they can always use that as a way to be like, well, you didn't hit. That isn't really a clear. You can hear the, you go back to the hockey analogy. 7-2 win. Is it a decisive victory? You say yes, and I can tell you a story where I say it isn't. I could sing.
Really?
I could sing you a song.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Give me an example. I'm eager to hear this.
Oh, refs called two penalties off the start that were blatant no calls, right? Or were blatant calls that were weak. So they gave them the power plays. Then they missed an offsides. That was goal number 3. You kidding me? We scored 2, made it 3-2. Then we scored again to tie it up. They called it off. said it was goalie interference, and on and on. And you can just hear how the pundits of a story can make a 7-2 feel like it was actually a 4-2 game. Man, that was close. And so when I look,
I get
when you
I
look
get
at
what you're
this,
saying right now.
when I look at this, I've been saying this to Albertans. I guess I just don't need to hear it. But that doesn't mean the audience doesn't.
Right.
That is, you're trying to go, okay, we sit on, what is it, the third largest oil reserve on the planet, roughly? I think that's the number I keep hearing.
Arguably, if not higher.
I don't know. That's not to go with all the other industry.
Yeah, we're not
have
talking
here.
coal,
anything else.
LNG.
Are we so naive to think they're just going to let us go? Folks, wake up. I think we're awake.
No.
I think we're on this show, I hope.
Well, what do you think today was? It was to show you, not my opinion, not Keith's opinion, not nobody's opinion. This is what the laws say.
Right.
Now contend with the law. If you want to win this, you better show the referees that you have a majority. And you could argue in court and you could do whatever you want. At the end of the day, the House of Commons.
I agree with you.
The Governor General, the Senate.
All I'm pointing out, and I think, when I go back to where the conversation to where it is today, when I started out, it was a Canada 51st state. Had a bunch of different people on. We just talked about it. And by the end of it, Twos was trying to argue with me. And I'm like, Twos, you're wrong. And he'll probably call me after me saying this on air again. But like, Canada 51st state is a terrible idea. Canada as a whole going as a 51st state is a terrible idea. I don't care who you are, unless you're maybe one of the elites. That makes zero sense for us out in the West, makes zero sense for probably Vesper, although he is out East. And there's a whole bunch of other people that would, it just doesn't make sense.
I'll be honest, I have no opinion. Just for the record, I have no opinion. I'm just sharing what are the likelihoods and what you're facing.
As the story conversation continues to grow, I think there is, what I'm noticing is the table is being set. Now, if Carney gets in for the last month, all the conversations, you could just throw them in the can and wait for the next opportunity. That's all I'm going to say. Is there'll be an opportunity somewhere down the road.
Again, short of a complete civil war.
Correct.
Or an invasion by the United States.
Sure.
Give me a scenario where the Governor General, the Senate, the House of Commons, by the way, guys,
and the people, Vesper, and the people,
and the province, and the provinces.
I'm telling you right now, the Alberta population, if Pierre gets in, a whole bunch is just like, we got Pierre in, things are going to get better. That's
and it's not going to fix the equalization payments, and it's not going to.
I understand.
You're going to stay disgruntled.
So you look at the table that's being set,
and
we're building it off of. I'm building it off of. Right, the way my brain looks at this is, I go, everything my eyes tell me is Pierre Poilievre is going to win. Minus, you take out the polls and all the, I'm just like the videos and everything, the way people talk. It's just like Pierre is the popular choice. He has been now for, a year, longer than that. Enter Carney. And you go, okay, Carney is a part of the elite world. Now, we've rattled off the WEF and all these different things, the banking side of this, on and on and on. He represents a ton of humanity that I'm not very fond of. You get him selected, yes, use the word, as the Liberal candidate and the Prime Minister of Canada. And now he's going to run. He can't, I don't know, you're French speaking, like, tell me, is he a fluent, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on this. Is he a gifted orator in French?
No. But that's not really the issue. I want to encourage you. Can I encourage you? Because I usually am not known for encouraging people, but let me encourage, right? I know I'm supposed to be a Christian encouraging people, but let me encourage you something. So I don't say this lightly. I pulled in a lot of favors in the last year. And you know that I've had a hand in helping a lot of influencers build their brands and blah, 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 and things like that. But before that, in my career, I did a lot of favors for a lot of people. And some of those people are analysts. I have, in the last 3 months, pulled, I'd say, roughly 16 analysts. One of them is more of a statistician. A few of them are in the States. Some of them are in Europe, not Russia. Some of them are... We've campaigned together helping upper echelon brands.
Sure.
And I gave them all these numbers and the media and the perception of the media and this. They found $160 million being pumped into the liberal advertising apparatus in the last 3 months. These are guys that are like way more equipped in terms of analysis than me. Okay. It's very, very important that you understand that there is a lot of smoke, and all the people that I have relied on for the last 20 years are telling me you guys are still in majority based on consensus.
So then what are we even talking about? Because at the end of the day,
well, this is the great show, right? The great show is this whole Kamala Harris effect of, I think what's happened is that people are so terrified. I mean, I had an uncle, 57 years old, very successful out in New Jersey, call me with panic in his voice the day before the election about what are we going to do if Kamala wins? Like how many times was the American media and the people, the pundits for the right wing Trump MAGA saying things like, if the Democrats win, America as we know it is over. There is a catastrophization that is occurring in Canada, and rightfully so to some degree. But we have to recall that everyone was afraid Kamala Harris, who jumped in out of nowhere,
was going to win. And so Kamala Harris had her chuckling, laughing thing that was making her sound stupid. She sounded like a robot. Well, we have a carny who can't speak French, is condescending, is all these. He's not ready. He's just not ready, right? Give him a couple more years. He might be ready. Let him lead the opposition party, if they even make it to the opposition party. Maybe then I'd say he'd be ready to properly, verbal fencing. But the fact of the matter is, these analysts that have, all of them over 30, some of them between 20 to 30 years of experience in analyzing this. I pulled in all my strings that I don't share who they are. Give me a sec. And what ends up happening is that they all come back and they say to me, yeah, this is not going to happen. This is just not going to happen. It still looks like a conservative majority. Vesper, question for you. What are your thoughts on the 2019 election in the States? Trump versus Biden.
Oh, it was stolen.
Okay. Can you?
It's that simple.
All these analysts you talk to, excuse me.
Yeah, they all saw all the missing votes.
Okay, no. But all these analysts that you're talking to that are saying you're in a clear majority, you guys are going to win.
Yeah.
Can they account for if it's stolen?
No, but see, here's the thing. So there's a distinction in our federal governments, and I don't know if you've had people that already explained this, so I apologize if I'm explaining it. Federal elections are counted by hand. There's no machines. Okay? The distinction between America and Canada is that we count our ballots by hand. Can that be rigged? Anything can be rigged. You know me. Like, from the people that I spoke to, now I didn't pull on this network of people that I worked with for the American elections, but the word trend is, people look at charts and talk trends, but there are social cues that people need to keep in mind. One of the things that people don't understand, and I'll call this out. So people like Patrick Bet-David on PBD, right? People like Maxime Bernier, people like all these people, okay? People forget that different geographic terrains for warfare are different circumstances of engagement, and the rules of engagement change. If PBD thinks that Pierre, for example, going out and doing what Trump did is going to get him votes, he's mistaken. Why? The landscape is different. The trends are different. The language is different. The mindset is different. You don't war in Canada like you war in America. You just don't. There's a reason why. If Maxime is the small Trump, then why isn't all of Canada behind him? PBD. Precisely because Canada has been primed with a trend mindset towards a socialistic, democratic way of thinking. Trump is a Democrat, but he promoted republicanism. People forget this about America. They are not a democracy. No matter how much the Democrats want to call out democratic republic, you are not a democratic republic. You are just a republic, right? And that's the problem. When you then war, in a republic. It is a very different mindset with people that are very patriotic. Americans by nature are very anti-conformist. They rebelled against the crown. They will fight anyone. They will antagonize and take any side on any issue that benefits them, which is a good thing. I don't mind that. I mean, you've all watched Armageddon, Independence Day. There's an American flag fighting everything. The mindset of Americans is not the mindset of the nice Canadian peacekeeping people, right? When you look at the elections, for example, in America, 2019, Trump should have won. It was clear people did not want the mainstream media, the Democrats, the Pelosi's, all that stuff. But how could you know? Well, easy. You look at the social cues and the trends and the things that go on, not just with the lawsuits, the Pelosi's going in insider trading, all the garbage that happened. But at the same time, you then come back to Canada, right? So people forget this. It's actually fascinating. Trudeau was prime minister in the 2 terms of Trump. He literally saw 3 presidents in his time in office, which is fascinating. People forget that. We've had basically a monkey running this country while America had 3 presidential elections, right? The rigging is not happening on the ballots themselves. The rigging in Canada will happen through mental manipulation and perception. What China is trying to do in Canada, before I go back to America, is trying to discourage and give this boogeyman illusion. It's like those movies, where the guy does a shadow puppet of a big scary monster, but it's just your fingers. They're trying to do this based on what my analysts are saying, that there is a ton of money being funneled. They don't know where. They can't say who, but they're seeing an influx of money that is suddenly propagating all over, not just X, but YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And they're looking at this like, why is this money suddenly being pumped in? They see the conservatives pumping money in, but not at the rate that the liberal apparatus seems to be. And they made a correlation that there is a marketing campaign to skew perception. Does that make sense so far? In America, what made it so that Trump even lost? Was it the election? I would say that it was a lot of things. You had the FBI against you. You had the CIA against you. You had a House, right? The House was against you. I think he had the Senate, but even the Senate was trying to distance themselves from him. And after 4 years of Biden, come on, man, eating chocolate ice cream, and this is like Mr. Sleepy Joe, and them deeming Christians as domestic terrorists for speaking up at schools, and the whole transgender agenda, and the dismemberment of children, and a bunch of things. This is the social cues we're talking about that you got to watch. This is what I was telling my family. Like, are you not seeing this? Are you not seeing the foaming discontent that's going to lead people's feet to a voting booth and vote like it could have been Mussolini? They didn't care. Get these guys out. Like, I've said this to you before, and I've joked with twos. I'll take the Cosa Nostra any day over any government in Canada, because I know that they'll only tax me about 30%. Max. They'll always just ask me give me 30% of whatever it is that you want. Sure, no problem, Mr. Don Giovanni. Here you go. Here's your money. Don't take half my money. So I think America, and again, based on just looking at it, we've agreed, me and some of those people that I work with, that we knew that Trump was going to win. But it's understandable why people were afraid of Harris, because let's face it, what's happening to these people in America is now happening to Albertans. Let me tell you something that you probably don't know. Nobody in Quebec is panicking. Explain that.
Nobody in Quebec is panicking over this?
Nope. Nobody.
I don't know. I would say different mindset. I don't know if that's a fair assessment.
Because it doesn't affect us.
Sure. And forgive me, Vesper.
I mean, it does affect us, but it doesn't affect us.
The premier who you guys had in place for COVID, you guys voted him back into place. Yes?
No, we didn't vote him back into place. He bribed everyone for $500 across Quebec.
You call it whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's how he got the vote.
Listen to me. You call it whatever you want to call it. You voted him back in, right?
Yeah.
And he's the guy who locked you down?
Back in. Oh, yeah.
Tell me how that makes any sense. Tell me how that makes any sense.
It makes sense within the context that Quebec is corrupt and a construction.
Sure. But we're talking to the human condition and everything else. So I look at the two provinces and I go, so why is Alberta so different? Because
different is not different. Because Alberta is not corrupt. Alberta is being.
There's a lot of Albertans who would say differently.
No. We're not saying that level of corruption. Of course, there's corruption everywhere. That's not what I mean. What I'm saying is Quebec is foundationally corrupt.
But the question is, why is no Quebecer upset about where things are going right now? You already said, well, it's not going to affect us one way or another, but it is. Like, it is.
Not to make light of it, it's because the equalization payments make life easier here for us than it does for you. And so because we're more comfortable than you, we're not as pissed off as you. I can get an apartment for $1,000 here. How much are the apartments in Alberta?
Not that cheap.
I can get groceries that are cheaper here. There's so many things in Quebec that we've always been the cheapest place for housing and renting and on and on. The point is this, so that we don't completely lose whatever it is that we were saying.
No. Well, part of the reason, I'm staring at this election, and you go, well, it's different. It's different terrain on how to win it compared to, or how to take it compared to the United States. Fair, right? And so we look at 2019 and we go, did they take it or did they not? Right? And all the people I respect all say the same thing, because I'm like, I don't know, did they take it or didn't they? And
they did. Arizona was one of the places that people big time dropped 200,000 votes.
And so everything they said against Donald Trump, right? They really painted him. They're against the FBI, you're against the CIA, they're against everything. The first year he won, he had 62, almost 63 million votes. The next year, in 2020, he had 74 million votes, which means he had a stronger group of Americans come out for him than the first time around. And then, too big to rig, in 2024, he had 77 million come out.
Yeah, it's a win. It was a win in 2019.
What I'm saying here is, although the landscape and the rules are different, if all the people I respect say 2019, they took it. Okay. They lost in 2024. Does this group of human beings?
Yeah, but you're making, I'm sorry, all those people that said that, I hope some of them did mention that they were using electronic means for voting. Canada does not do that. And there's a difference. It's not
I'm not saying that they're going to come in and use the same means by electronic. I just mean the intent is still going to be the same. They want Canada.
They're already doing it. They're already doing it with hand-dong.
If Quebecers can be won over, in your estimation, by a $500 here, the guy literally just locked you up. Curfews, on and on and on.
Hold on.
But $500 is going to change it. They just gave you, before he went on his run, train.
I know where you're going.
He's going to give you a whole bunch of money. And if that's the simplicity of the east side of Canada, they're already doing it.
No, here's where you got to remember. I don't know if you recently looked up this thing, but can you look things up while we're having a conversation?
Yeah, sure.
Like, show the people.
Sure.
Look up Premier Legault. Look up Pierre Poilievre immigration. So Legault is pro Poilievre. You know why? Because Poilievre told him, I will take my hands off of forcing you and you can decide your own immigration. The federal government of Pierre Poilievre will not involve. What does Legault want? Legault does not want the federal government to decide the immigration levels. Look it up, you'll see. So yeah, he's a piece of, meat. Let's call him that. But let's also acknowledge that there's a reason why Yves Blanchette and Premier Legault are favoring the Conservatives, because Pierre and people that know Anaida, his wife, it was from Montreal and Quebec. And this person has family here still. They just want their own. They want the federal government to get its hands off of immigration, and just on that alone, they're going to back Pierre.
Here's what X says. Premier Francis Legault wouldn't tell Quebecers explicitly who to vote for, but praised Pierre Poilievre for promising Quebec would have almost full control over its own immigration. This is a win for Quebec. That is...
yeah, but what is that also a win for?
Well, Canada.
But will Pierre fix equalization? My argument is no. Will it come to the table? Perhaps. This is where Keith gave me optimism when he said there is a greater likelihood under Pierre that we can have that discussion much better. Because what is Pierre really about? I mean, forget his morale and blah, blah, blah. Pierre wants to open up the West. And there's a ton of red tape, like you said so rightfully before, where my beef, if I could just end on this whole thing, my beef has never been on the politics of things. It's that like you said, the red tape over the red tape over the red tape, act upon act upon act upon act. Nothing is clear. Everything is hurdled. I'm not saying it should be simple. Look, law is complicated. Precision is required. But things like vagueness on what constitutes a majority, like, this is dumb. Set a number. Set a number. Why wouldn't you do that? Well, because,
Oh no,
some people might not be represented. The furries might not be represented. The banana people might not be represented. The purple people might not be represented. And then, that matters. We have to take all these into consideration. How long is that going to take? Oh, it's going to take a while. Like, what's a while? A year? Did you write how long it'd take? No, we didn't write how long it would take. We just wrote that it would be not an easy negotiation. My problem is the fact that we are dealing with a very antiquated system of law. The Constitution of Canada is built well, but is no longer with the times. It is presupposing that everybody is acting in good faith. Our Constitution needs to become more of like a today contract, like you know what I mean, NDA style, like if this, if that, if this, if a subsection that if you breach this, if you breach that. But then you ask yourself, Shaun, and I'm asking you a question and every viewer, if you were in power and writing a contract, how would you write that contract? I mean, I know you all know the answer. You're not writing a contract to benefit the other party. You're going to write a contract. Now, you may be a Christian and you'd say, let's make it 50-50. But something tells me that it's not the case. People that want to be in power are going to write social contracts to make sure. Like, why would you need a Clarity Act? We already have the ruling of the Supreme Court. Why would you need to make another act? Then there's the United Canada Act. Then there's the Constitutions Act. Then there's this act and that act that's contingent on that act. Why are you making all these hurdles? For years, we've all just been enjoying our frickin' Tim Hortons doubles, eating our donuts, watching hockey. And these guys in the background have just been making act after act, amending act after act, preparing everything. So now that Alberta wants to leave, gets 2 million people out of, let's say, the 3 million. That's a majority. No, we have to weigh if it's the will of the people. No, you don't. It's a majority. Well, it's a majority if it doesn't infringe on the purple people.
Which it will.
Wait a minute. Where does it say that in the Constitution or the Act? It doesn't. It just left it open that the House and the Senate decide. I don't know. Did Keith bring that up in the conversation? I can't remember right now. But did he mention that it's the House that has preeminence in this, then the Senate, and then the governor general, and then it falls to the provinces. If you don't remember, it's okay. I don't know if it didn't, but I want to remind everyone that's the process. So I'm sorry if it sounds gloomy. I think you can do it, Alberta.
I don't think it sounds gloomy. I like, to me, I've been arguing this back and forth, maybe with you, but certainly with others, for a long time. It's like, yeah, it's not this easy thing. You get 10 people and out we go. Like, and you get into the political realm and you realize there's bad faith actors that are going to come in and try and dismember it so it can't get off the ground, and it's going to be on and on and on. Freedom Community can talk lengthy about all the different people who come in and try and stir up crap to just destroy, what is it? Unity. You talked about it early on in this. I guess I just look at the world, Vesper, and maybe I'm completely wrong. And you give me that face. What is that face?
No, you're not wrong. Look, man, usually I come on and we talk and I'm always like, yeah, he's completely wrong and blah, 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 blah. But that's not what I'm doing here. I'm not saying anyone is particularly wrong here. This whole show, and thank you for having me on again, was to inform everybody of where you can go, what you can read, and ignore what I say. Don't trust the thing I say. Don't trust what anyone tells you. Do your own reading, research. And it's not hard, guys. It's not written.
I agree with you. Listen,
it's not.
I agree with you, but I think where a ton of people are getting to, and this is both very like, whoa, that's a little bit unnerving, and yet then you look at the world and you go, am I going insane? If Carney gets in, this whole thing revolves around Carney getting in, because we can both agree Polyev gets in tomorrow. This whole conversation.
But I'm going to make an argument. Even if Carney gets in, if this galvanizes Albertans and you get 2.5 million Albertans.
What does it mean if Carney gets in, Vesper?
It means that you guys are going to have a fire lit under all of you, and you're going to make sure that every Albertan is going to be on board with this referendum. This is where the Sovereignty Act helps you. And you then get Daniel Smith to lead the charge and get a 65 to 70% majority of Albertans we want out. And the Supreme Court will not stand in your way. Will they try to throttle you in negotiations? Will they try to create it very hard monetarily for you to get out? That's fine. But you can get out. Problem. I just want people to know there is always a way out. You said something, I think, yesterday with your guest.
Larry Taunton.
There's always hope. There is always hope. God is on our side, and God will never give us a situation where there is no way out. There's always a way out. And Alberta has a way out, but it has to be overwhelming. So are you in the driver's seat, as Keith said on your show? You are. My job is today was to, and I'm sure Keith, I'm hoping, is going to reinforce this, is to map out what the terrain looks like as you're driving. This is a rally car. This is not a NASCAR ride. This is going through terrains of ups and downs and weather and things like that. You can do it. If anybody could do it, it's Albertans. Tough as nails, salt of the earth people. You just need to get on board and unify. It's that simple.
Vesper, appreciate you coming on today and doing this.
It was my pleasure. I hope I was of some benefit to some of your viewers.